Hi, welcome to this astrology report for the week of June 9th through 12th, 2025. This is a really interesting week astrologically. The big news is that Jupiter has moved into Cancer. I'm going to go ahead and note that on our chart here as we get started, but there's so much more to this week than just this Jupiter move into Cancer. My hope with these charts is that if you are interested in learning more about astrology and the way charts work, that this is helpful for you. The way I do the images with the chart. And if you're just interested in the astrology and want to listen to that and sort of ignore that aspect, that's fine too. That's always my intention with these reports, or maybe something in the middle. So this really is sort of the busiest astrological period that I've seen in quite a while, maybe in 6 months or more. There's an incredible amount happening all at the same time. But we want to look first in a time like that at the slowest signatures, the planets that are moving the slowest, and sort of if they're involved in anything, because those notes are going to hold the biggest feel. Um, and so, in order to start sort of teasing apart everything that's happening, I want to start here with Jupiter's ingress into Cancer. Jupiter has moved into Cancer. Jupiter takes about 13 months to go through a sign, about 13 years to go all the way around the chart. And now, here we are for the first time in 13 years with Jupiter back in Cancer, where he will be for the next year or so. And Cancer is Jupiter's favorite place to be. So this is relevant regardless of your sign. Whatever your sign is, we are all under the significations of this astrology. So I'm definitely not just talking to Cancers here. I'm talking to all of us. Jupiter is a benefic. Jupiter brings expansion and opportunity and healing and growth. And in Cancer, Jupiter is exalted. Jupiter is the strongest in Cancer. It's Jupiter's favorite place to be. And so for the next year or so, we have this very beautiful signature of Jupiter in Cancer. It signifies a few different things that I want to start with. And again, this is stuff we'll be working with for the next year. Definitely emotional growth and maturity, maturing on an emotional level. But what I love most in terms of that is like a deepening of emotion, a feeling of emotional security, or just a feeling of security, I should say. But I don't mean security in a material sense, although that's always nice when that's the case as well, and that can be quite supportive. But with Jupiter in Cancer, we have the chance to feel more safe and secure. To move, makes me think of attachment theory a little bit and sort of moving from insecure to secure. But really, it's just that feeling of safety, of belonging, feeling good in your body. There's something about Cancer that brings in this feeling of roots, of foundation, right? And often that manifests in terms of our family of origin, our physical home. But really, if we think about it as roots and grounding, I mean, I think these days we all get that feeling of roots and grounding through so many different things. And wherever it's coming from, an enhanced feeling of security, of rooting in your life as yourself now is part of what Jupiter in Cancer is working with us about over the course of the next year or so. It's a time where we're sort of learning to trust our feelings more. It's a very feelings based signature, I always think it's interesting that Jupiter is exalted in Cancer. You know, it says something about Jupiter that I really like. It's almost like when you meet someone's partner and you're like, oh, I understand you so much better now that I've met your significant other. I kind of feel that way about the fact that Jupiter is exalted in Cancer. There's something, there's something so warm about it, and there is something about trusting yourself, trusting your gut instincts, trusting your intuition more deeply, nurturing yourself, seeing that nurturing of yourself and that nurturing of others as a strength, not as a sacrifice. Um, you know, this sort of inner expansion, being able to heal, is a major part of Jupiter and Cancer. We really have the potential to heal anything that's been broken. Uh, there's just a softening to it. In my monthly horoscopes, I often use the phrase a softening of hard edges, you know, and I think that especially after all that mental stimulation and the constant overstimulation of Jupiter and Gemini, this is even more needed. That sort of comfort of Jupiter and Cancer to our emotions, allowing us to slow down, be gentle with ourselves and others, find greater rooting. The only other signature I want to mention for this Jupiter and Cancer before building onto this, because we're talking about the week of June 9th through 12th. We're not just talking about Jupiter and Cancer here, but it is where we need to start, I think, today. So thank you for bearing with me. This is probably going to be a bit of a longer report than usual because as I wrote here, this really is the most dynamic astrology of the month, perhaps of the summer. There is a lot to it. So the only other signature I want to mention right now about Jupiter and Cancer that's really important is like a fertility component, a creativity boost. A fertility boost is possible. You know, Cancer is a very sort of fertile sign, and then Jupiter um, is sort of a surge of energy, of expansion, of optimism. So these two coming together um, could be a great time for creating something, you know, and um, it could be a long-term vision or project. It could be a creative project. It could be a family, but it can really, it's just a fertile time for whatever we want to do. So as you can hear, there's nothing bad about Jupiter and Cancer. Jupiter and Cancer is fabulous. And so that's why I 100% had to start there today, because that is the big news and that is going to be with us for the next year. Okay, now thinking about this week in particular and why it's so incredible. What happens right now when planets move into Cancer is that they come into a square, an immediate square, with Saturn and Neptune. Let me mark this on our chart again. If following along is helpful for you or interesting for you, do it. Otherwise, just listening to the astrology is good too. Um, I think a lot of people probably fall in that something in the middle category. Okay, so Saturn and Neptune are newly in Aries. They have not been there for long at all. We're just getting used to these signatures. Neptune's going to be there for years and years and years. Saturn's going to be in Aries for the next 2.5 years. These are slow moving, powerful planets. This is a major transit that these planets have changed signs. And the fact that they're hanging out together for the next year or so is really special. They'll be together in Aries, they'll retrograde into Pisces, they'll come back into Aries before Saturn finally takes off and splits from Neptune. And they'll both be left to sort of do their thing a little bit more easily at that time. But what does this mean for us this week? As Jupiter moves into Cancer, which again is something that is pretty rare, I have to mention that Mercury does too. So here we go, starting to add to the complications. So let's put Mercury in this picture as well. Um, just trying to make sure this all stays with us. Thank you for your patience. Okay. So Mercury moves into Jupiter, into Cancer today as well on June 9th. On June 9th, on Monday, Jupiter and Mercury move into Cancer. When they do, they're obviously conjunct each other. So that's a thing. They just finished up a conversation in Gemini. They're together now. They're in communication. It's adding more information to the signature that I just spoke of than usual. It's coming in on sort of a mental, intellectual level, perhaps. These feelings of healing. But I feel like what really overshadows all of this is this square, because Saturn and Neptune can kind of confuse things. So the square with Mercury suggests that this week there could be some misunderstandings. There could be some miscommunication. But you could feel misunderstood, or other people could feel misunderstood. There's sort of the potential for oversensitivity. Mercury, Cancer can make us more sensitive to tone and to words. And so everyone is working with the signature right now. So there's the potential to sort of take things a little bit too personally, or to misread intentions in some kind of a way with an aspect like this. So definitely be aware of that this week. That's kind of minor though, because that Mercury is going to move on and within a few days be out of here. So some little miscommunications or oversensitivities could be possible this week, or just sort of like a mental fogginess as well, a bit of a cloudiness. I just want to mention as well, and I'll say this again at the end, but just really briefly, that I take this through the charts, through horoscopes. I really get into this. This is the main focus of my horoscopes this month. So if you haven't checked out your horoscope on my channel yet, please do that. I think you might enjoy it. If you like this video, you'd enjoy that. It's a bit more polished. This is more of a place for check-ins and to connect as a community, and to talk about the astrology as we go. But those horoscopes, best viewed for your rising sign, can kind of give you the most information about where this is falling in your chart. And I can sort of hone these different signatures depending on what makes the most sense based on where it's falling in the chart. I know that's depending on where you are with astrology, that's a little bit confusing, and sometimes people can resist watching their horoscope for their rising sign, but give it a try. Even if you don't connect with your rising sign that much, which a lot of people don't, try it for your rising sign. It's sort of the way horoscopes are actually drawn up. I have a playlist on my channel about learning astrology, and there's a lot more information. I'll link at the end to that playlist. A lot more information about how to read horoscopes and why they're done the way they are, and even why you don't connect that much with your rising sign in that report. Okay, so the Mercury square to Saturn and Neptune is quick, but the Jupiter one is slower because Jupiter is slower. So Jupiter doesn't actually come into these exact squares until the middle of the month. So Jupiter will be square Saturn on the 15th and then Neptune on the 18th. But really, these squares are active all month. And that's why at the beginning of this report, I talked about healing, but it might not feel like it yet because of a few different things. But starting to explain that Neptune sort of can blur whatever it's interacting with. This is Neptune here. It's sort of the trident, Poseidon, Neptune, that's that symbol. Um, and then this is Saturn. Saturn, I always think, looks like a church a little bit with that cross there, and it is sort of authority figures. Um, it can relate to uh, uh, father's side um, uh, of things. Um, it's kind of the rules, time, um, structure. Sometimes delays. Saturn doesn't mind sort of delaying us if it's for our best good. But what I was starting to say is that whatever Neptune touches is sort of blurry at first. It's hard for us to wrap our head around. So just as Jupiter moves into Cancer here, we have this sort of blurring coming in from Neptune where we're not really able to see it. We're not really able to understand it. So if you feel a little off today or this week, if you feel a little off right now, if things, it might be, I mean, this is all really new. This is all really different. And with everything sort of starting to interact with each other, outer planets with inner planets, the vibe is different. And what's happening in your life might be really different. Um, so it's sort of a time for a new story. And I like the way that Saturn and Neptune are interacting with this Jupiter ultimately because I think it's helping us to pace ourselves. I think that we are moving at a slower pace than we would otherwise. You know, this Jupiter in Cancer is just so nurturing and so healing, and it wants us to move forward and just feel good and feel better and um, be more vulnerable, be more open, be more loving, be more nurturing to ourselves and to others, heal what's been broken. And I think Saturn and Neptune are sort of slowing it down a little bit in a way that is actually positive, kind of saying, whoa, you know, let's make sure that this is something that's really sustainable. Let's make sure that this is really something that's in your best interest. Let's make sure that you are doing everything you need to do to build this as well as possible. Um, so I like the influence ultimately, but there is a way in which this Jupiter in Cancer isn't really able to get off the ground the way we might like this week, this month, because of this pull over from Saturn and Neptune. And that's a big part of why I'm sort of talking about how um, we're healing. This new healing is happening with Jupiter in Cancer. It definitely is. But we're not really able to see it or understand it yet because of the Saturn and Neptune pull. But there's something else astrologically that's happening that made me say that I really need to add to the mix here. So we have right now Venus newly in Taurus, and that Venus, when she moved into Taurus, comes into a pretty immediate square with Pluto in Aquarius. And I want to say Pluto newly in Aquarius, but I wonder if that's still fair. I mean, Pluto has been here for maybe a year at this point, but since Pluto is going to be in Aquarius for 20 years altogether, it still feels kind of new to me. And when Pluto is connecting with these personal planets, Venus, Mars, Mercury, it's sort of activating the signature in our lives in a different way. So Venus square Pluto is a little bit intense, to be sure. It can be things coming to the surface to be healed. Pluto wants us to transform. Pluto wants us to do it differently. And there's something about Venus and Taurus that really just wants things to be stable. So there's a tension between that, but there's also like a reckoning. It's gonna come up and out because it's like let's get this up and out and heal it so that we can have that stability again. Pluto is the stronger signature in here. So Pluto wins. Even if Venus in Taurus just wants to sort of relax and take it easy, Pluto in Aquarius is going to make sure that we transform a little bit. And Pluto is the depth, the underworld. So it's things that come up to be healed that were buried, that were hidden to us, that we weren't aware of. So you could be made aware of something that you didn't know about. It could be connecting with a part of yourself that you've lost touch with. It could be something challenging a comfort zone in some kind of a way. There could be financial elements to it because of Taurus. There's something about it that feels potentially financial, like financial boundaries maybe being crossed in some kind of a way, or some sort of issue with expenses, coming to the surface that is challenging in some kind of way or pulling on another priority. But it's interesting that it's happening at the same time this week as this other signature, right? And then we have just one more thing that I need to add to the mix, and we'll have the full picture, and I can sort of talk about everything as one big picture. On the 11th, on Wednesday, we have a full moon in Sagittarius, of course, because there wasn't enough going on. We need to also have a full moon in Sagittarius. But I love that there's a full moon in Sagittarius in the middle of all of this, because really it kind of all is a bit heavy, right? Like there's healing and there's things coming to the surface, and it's really lovely, but it's also like, I don't know, blurry and miscommunications and delays and things being sort of a little bit beneath the surface, all this new era stuff. And there's nothing more sort of hopeful and optimistic and expansive than a Sagittarius full moon. So I think having that this week is so lovely. It's like, and it's still a party, and life is still a party, and mostly things are okay. We're still able to see the things that are working. As much as maybe there's challenges right now, adjusting to a new era, finding our way, we're seeing the brightness and the lightness too. We're seeing the hope, the opportunity. We understand the importance of thinking positively. We understand the importance of that mental freedom that provides. And so we embrace that as much as we can. And maybe that is a big part of where this emotional wisdom that we're building with Jupiter and Cancer is coming from. There's so much astrology lately that suggests kind of what does seem a little bit evident in the world, which is that we're sort of learning right now how to move through a crazy time and still enjoy life a little where possible. How do we stay secure? How do we stay emotionally secure so that we can be our best selves in the world, so that we don't waste time, so that we don't lose our feeling of being present in our lives and in the day. It's so easy when something comes up, something scary, something difficult, something challenging, to go into a really a panicky state, and from that space we don't make good decisions. If we can somehow find that centering, find that calm, that confidence comes more. We take responsibility for what we need to take responsibility for. We let go of what we can't control. There's so much wisdom that comes when we find that center. And yeah, I think trying to balance that sort of peace in a crazy shifting time is maybe what this astrology is all about. And I do think that this week is especially dynamic, but I also think it just kind of signifies a broader shift that we're really reckoning with in general right now. And Jupiter in Cancer at the end of the day is a really positive thing. So we're actually stepping into a lot of pleasantness here because the Sagittarius full moon is really positive too. But like I said, why does it feel like you just kind of can't feel it just yet? Is it because of that Neptune? I think it's because there's just so much going on. And yeah, it's just going to take a while for us to understand it, but we might look back in the future and really understand what a dynamic month and even week this was. So thank you so much for being here. Check out the horoscopes on my channel. I will attach some other astrology videos that are relevant right now here, such as Mercury in Cancer, which there's quite a lot to say about, but I didn't quite get to it here. Oh, not Mercury in Cancer. I actually was just working on that video. That will come out next week. Venus and Taurus. I'm attaching Venus and Taurus. Okay, I hope you have a wonderful day. Thank you so much for being here. Have a wonderful week.